right, welcome everyone to the Drones and STEM Careers of the Future webinar. We're going to be getting started in just a minute. If you are joining us on your screen now, you should see one that shows the slides and then another that shows us here on the video, and then there should be a bar in between those. So feel free as we're going through the webinar, you can drag that bar to see either more of the slides, more of us, depending on what we're talking about. You will all be muted because we have a big group here today, but if questions come up as we're going, you should have a questions panel. Feel free to type in any questions as we go. If we feel like there's some that would be really good for the whole group, we may save them for the Q&A section at the end. But if you're having any tech issues or any urgent questions, we'll be answering those throughout the webinar as well. So with that said, thank you for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started. To give you a quick view of what's ahead, we're going to be covering a lot of ground today, and so I want to start by introducing our guests. We'll be joined later also by Ted Thompson to do our panel, but before that, we want to start by doing a general introduction to what is career and technical ed. You may have been hearing a lot about it recently. It's been getting a lot of good positive press, and then just specifically look at what are the opportunities for our students that are interested in a career in the UAV industry. From there, we'll open it up to Jim and Ted. They both bring a ton of expertise to share what they've got to say about it, what educators can do to prepare their students for those careers, and then share some of the resources that some of our teachers have been using to bring this sort of program to their students. So I'm Michelle with PCS Adventures. If you watched any of our other webinars, you know I work in our STEM curriculum and product development, and I'm really excited to be joined today by Jim. Jim's been with PCS for a long time and brings a ton of experience from a broad range of fields. So Jim, if you could start out just to tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm an educator by nature, I think. I've been an educator for over 37 years. Worked at state education agencies, local school districts, universities, still currently teaching at a university in some graduate programs. So I'm a real advocate for lifelong learning, and I'm a real advocate for hands-on learning. And that's really what PCS really is all about. So it's great to be here. I'm glad that Michelle has helped organize this, and I'm sure that you will also enjoy hearing from Ted later. He's a wealth of information about educational programs and what drones can be in the future and what they are today. So I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Jim. Jim is very modest. Jim is well known in the Boise area for starting one of our first career and technical post-secondary and high school programs and really bridging the connection between those. And so to get us started, Jim, for anyone who's joining, you know, what is career and technical ed, and why do you feel like it's a really important piece for high schools?
Career and technical education really isn't anything new. It is something that's been around. It's had 4 or 5 different names. It was vocational education, tech ed, a number of different names and titles. But in reality, it's a type of education that creates an opportunity for kids to learn by doing. And it really starts at the junior high level in most schools, or middle school levels. And it can be mostly introductory courses at that stage. And then as they move into high school, it becomes more of a preparatory kind of program in the 10th, 11th, and 12th grades before graduation. The goal behind career and technical education is preparing students to work, preparing students for the world of work. And so there's always that scope and interest that is kind of driving the career and technical education field. And most all the technical education programs have very specific advisory committees from industry that provide feedback to them on how their programs should function, what is needed by employers to promote people in moving into that world of work. So it's really a program that is designed for students at that level to help prepare them for post-secondary education and or the world of work and or military. So there's a lot of different options that it prepares students for. And the teachers in tech ed traditionally come specifically from industry in some of the more specific areas like machining and manufacturing. It could be piloting, drone piloting, a number of different areas. But most of the programs at the high school level have to have a real industry focus. And the really wonderful thing about technology education is that it promotes the idea of learning by doing, and learning because you need to know it, not because you have to know it, or you have to know it and memorize it. It's a matter of being able to problem solve, and project-based learning is what tech ed is really all about. And it's kind of been ahead of its time for many, many years. And it's getting a lot of press right now because four-year academic programs are still wonderful programs, and I would encourage all students to do that if they can, and or start out at a 2-year program and get your technical education certificate, make some money while you're going to school so you don't have that huge debt to pay off once you get into that, once you finish your post-secondary training. So there's a lot of different options out there, but career and technical education is a great solution for many, many students. And it does not require a 4-year academic diploma oftentimes to get those jobs, and the career tech field allows you to get the specific training to move directly into the world of work. And so that's really the selling point for career and tech ed, as well as a lot of students just really are wanting a break from the academic side. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to have academic skills to be successful. It just means that you're using those academic skills in a very specific way to do problem solving and to do technical kinds of work that are needed in the industries.
Absolutely. Well, and you touched on this a little bit, you know, there's post-secondary, there's career and technical ed, and the whole field has evolved so much, even from when I was in school. But out there, even sometimes I think there is this perception that career and technical ed is kind of a plan B for kids that maybe aren't post-secondary material. What would you say to that? Do you think that's still true?
I would unfortunately say that that's true, but it makes me angry whenever I hear it.
Sure.
Because I oftentimes hear educators as well as some parents say, well, career technical education isn't for my kid. It's really for someone else. It's really a very sad kind of situation when they say that, because the technical fields are the ones that are hiring mostly right now. And I can't tell you how many people I have come in contact with over the last couple of years who graduated from a 4-year academic program, and they are in retail at the mall because they can't find a job. And the technical jobs, most of the technical programs are also required to do placement activities for people who are graduating from those programs. So they help students get the jobs that they've been trained to do. And it's a very lucrative opportunity for students and kids and parents. And as a grandparent and a parent, it's really nice to have your kids working.
Sure.
Instead of wondering what they're going to do next. The career and technical education field really helps kids get to work, and they start to feel good about themselves because they are capable, and they can always go on to get that 4-year degree. It doesn't mean they've finished when they finish a career technical program at the post-secondary level, because they can graduate with associate's degree, and that associate's degree can translate directly into a 4-year academic program. So it's really a stepping stone and not an end-all.
Absolutely.
You can definitely continue your education with the post-secondary program. So,
well, and career and technical ed these days includes so many subjects. You know, it used to be just shop or something like that, but now you have a pre-engineering track, which may lead into more of a 4-year degree, or like you said, many others prepare you to go directly into work. And so it's been really cool for us working with so many drone educators to see that a lot of the CTE teachers are the ones that are really pushing technology forward and doing some of the most progressive programs, because they're responding to this emerging need within industry for people that have these very specific skills. So that's been really exciting to us and ties into what you've been saying all along. It's about what does industry need.
The real fascinating piece too about the career and technical fields is that it's the way that students learn is mostly by doing, and oftentimes subject matter areas like math and science are difficult for students because they don't see the real need to know that information. So when you're working with students in an electronics program or a machining program or an auto tech program or whatever it may be, an electronics program, a drone program, all of a sudden, when there's a need to know something because you need those skills to solve the problem, it is not a burden to learn that information because you want to be successful. And so they're learning by doing, and they're getting all the science skills and the math skills that they need in a very applied way. And that application is very, very important for everybody in that learning process.
Absolutely. And at PCS, we've always been about STEM education, you know, which has been science, tech, engineering, math, and it's been really cool to see these crossovers between what works really well in career and technical ed is STEM. It's applying these subjects together into real world scenarios through, like you said, that hands-on type of learning. And so since this is specifically focused on drone careers, we wanted to share a little bit of information on what are the career opportunities out there. You know, it's a question we get a lot. We see a lot of CTE programs right now know that there's a need out there for students with drone skills, but what does that really mean? You know, what do drones even do in industry? And so to start out, we've really embraced the word drone, but another word you hear a lot is UAV, an unmanned aerial vehicle. And drones are really used in a lot of diverse ways. And so to look at it in a really big picture perspective, one way that's near and dear to our hearts is our drone manufacturers, a drone racing company, is drones as vehicles. So this can be, you know, a pilot piloting in first person view, looking at goggles, seeing what the drone is seeing, doing some really, really skilled manual piloting. Or on the other end, you've got drones as autonomous vehicles. So the first picture up there is from the Google Popsicle drone delivery. You may have heard about it. It was in Virginia through a partnership with Virginia Tech. And so one of Google's drones brought a popsicle to a little boy, delivered via drone. He was, of course, very excited. So those two kind of represent the full spectrum of what drones can do in terms of delivery and transportation. You also have a whole other set of drones that are being used totally differently as a means of creative expression. So there are so many beautiful aerial shots and photos, videos that are coming because people can now get perspectives that before took really expensive camera equipment. And so in a lot of artistic fields, drones are opening up a lot of avenues. And then in industry, one of the really big ones is drones being used for data collection. And that can be anything from a photo to some really high level thermal, LiDAR, all sorts of different sensors are coming out all the time. And so to share just a couple examples, we wanted to share a couple things we found. This comes from a report that was done by Skyward, and they look specifically at really big companies with over $50 million in revenue. And they wanted to know how many companies are already using drones. And what they found is that a lot already are. So when they did this study this year, they found that 10% of these big companies they looked at were already using drones as part of their business, and that another 9% were planning to start using them very soon. So that's a lot of companies that our students could be going to work into that are going to be using drones in some way. And so the second thing they looked at is, okay, what are those industries that are really starting to incorporate drones? And so of, again, those big companies that they looked at, they found that construction and engineering companies were some of the first to really jump on and incorporate drones into what they're doing. Government has been a huge one with public safety. And then all these other industries are maybe just getting started, but there's a ton of potential in transportation with all the legislation going on. There's huge opportunities ahead. And then these are just the big industries. This doesn't even mention agriculture would be one that might be smaller, but a lot of opportunities there. So there are so many different examples. We couldn't possibly hit on all of them, but we wanted to share just a couple to give a couple snapshots of, okay, you have your students, they're interested in drones, they want to have a career in this. What would that career even look like? And so this is playing out in a million different ways and changing all the time, but these would be a couple. So one of the places we see people really getting started is in real estate photography. So if you had some sort of drone that could capture photos or videos, often this is a freelance sort of position where a real estate agent might contract you to say, hey, I need some really awesome shots of this property. It's going to help me sell it. So your job would be to go out and fly, get those photos, do some post-production, and then deliver them some really awesome images. And so those pilots are earning anywhere from 25 up to 200 an hour, depending on how skilled they are. And this is where a lot of people get started. We've even seen some of our teachers that got started flying in school, that got their commercial license and realized they could make a little money on the side flying their drone. This would just be one example though. So another one we wanted to share would be, sorry, I'm jumping around there, would be construction monitoring. And so we saw before, construction companies have been one of the first to really adopt drones, and they're using drones often to keep track of how the construction project is going on. So these pilots are making $250 to $500 an hour, and the reason would be they're doing some pretty skilled data analysis. So they're not just taking photos, they're flying drones that have sensors that can capture basically a 3D image that they can then analyze that data and then deliver to that construction company a 3D model in real time of their construction project moving forward. And some of these companies we're seeing are actually having such a need for this kind of work that they're hiring in-house teams of pilots to do this kind of work full time and making good money, making 50 to 70K a year, doing not just the piloting, but also that data analysis of that data they're collecting. So that would be another really exciting opportunity. Another industry where we're seeing kind of these full-time salaried position for pilots would be industry. So we're here in Idaho, we have a ton of both solar and wind farms. And so traditionally you have to send out a person in a car to go manually climb each one of these, put themselves at risk, inspect, see if you needed any maintenance. So these companies are discovering that they can send a guy with a drone to cover way more territory at way less personal risk to the people doing this. And those pilots are also earning really good money because they're doing some pretty technical flying, because they're trying to identify, do we need to do maintenance? Is there anything going on here? And often dealing with some kind of sensitive infrastructure. So it really takes some skill to both collect that data and maneuver your drone to see exactly what you need to see. The last one I want to mention, because this one we're hearing a lot about both here locally and in the news, would be public safety. So one example would be, there's been a ton of natural disasters in the last year, and drones have been really instrumental in being able to figure out where people are stranded, where to send the infrastructure, and where to send help right away. And so a lot of what those drones are doing is they're flying, they're capturing a ton of different photos that are then being taken back and stitched together to create what's called the orthomosaic map, really just a huge photo. And then people can scan and say, okay, we're seeing people are stranded here, we're seeing that there's extra flooding here. So then when they're sending in those live people on the ground, they can be a lot more efficient in where they're going. And the interesting thing here is that this is often people who are already firefighters, already, disaster responders, police officers that are doing their regular duties, but then also being trained to incorporate this new technology. So they're making the same salaries they would have made before, but their job is changing to incorporate this new technology. Another example you can see here is you hear a lot of negative press about drones shutting down firefighting efforts, but also a lot of those firefighters are using drones to go and monitor the progress of the flames to know where are they going to send in their people, where they're going to be safe and they can be most efficient.
The other thing that happens with this industry, and Ted and I were talking about this a little earlier, that there is such a huge spin-off of other kinds of jobs that are related to operating a business, like business management, accounting, all sorts of people that are in maintenance. I mean, entrepreneur, it goes on and on and on. So when you think of all the other spin-off jobs that come from having a drone business or people in business using drones, marketing. I mean, everybody needs to, if they're in business and an entrepreneur, they need to market what they do. And so drones also are needing marketing people to help market what they can do. The one thing that we hear a lot of is negative information about drones in the news. The news tends to always want to focus on the negative stuff. But there are so many positive things that drones are being used for, and they're helping us solve some international and world types of problems. And they're a huge benefit to the culture at this point in time. They're going to change what and how we do business in the future.
Absolutely. And it's been interesting as we've talked to a lot of people within industry and kind of asked, what are you looking for? What are your biggest needs? And of course, they need pilots, they need engineers, they need people with technical skills. A lot of them say, gosh, we just need people that are smart, can communicate, can do our marketing, run the business. So that's so true. And another big part of it that we've been kind of lucky to see from the inside here is the drone industry is so new. There are so many startups, so many entrepreneurs, people that are kind of taking these ideas and running with them, which has been really cool to see. So even here, we work with Thrust UAV, which is our local drone manufacturer, and they on their team have an electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer, software engineer, but then also people that are pilots, are mechanics, and that can run the inside of that business. So I think you're absolutely right.
And people that are used on the assembly line to assemble the drones.
Absolutely, and repair the drones.
Exactly. So there's a lot of different spin-off occupations, but the most important part about any job that anybody chooses to ultimately look into is the passion that you have for the work that you're going to do. If you are passionate about your work, it makes all the difference in the world about how successful you're ultimately going to be.
Absolutely. And so with that, we want to open this up. Both Jim and Ted, who's going to join us, have a ton of experience both on the career end and the education end. So we've already introduced Jim, but Ted is going to come and join us here. We are so excited to have Ted with us. He comes with a wealth of background as an educator at Embry-Riddle University. He also works as an airport manager and brings an aviation background. I know that's just a little bit of what you do, Ted.
This
so
much
if you
of
can
what he does.
Introduce yourself a little bit.
I got my start in aviation in the Air Force as a pilot, almost 30 years. So now into general aviation and teaching aviation-related courses for Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I'm now part of the worldwide campus at Embry-Riddle, assigned to the Department of Unmanned Flight Operations. So we're exploring ways to educate people into what the capabilities of these tools are and how to do it safely. So we're expanding almost as fast as the industry is expanding. As Michelle said, it's just exploding.
It is.
And in terms of what applications there are for unmanned, not only aerial vehicles, but unmanned systems in general.
Absolutely. So to get us started, I mean, both of you have seen this industry kind of from the beginning to where it is today. What do you see as the most exciting or promising opportunities for our students?
I would say the most promising opportunity is the infancy of this industry, and there are so many opportunities available. Pick your passion. There's going to be some unmanned aerial vehicle related aspect to that.
That's true.
In every area. Yeah.
And also the ease with which you can get into the most basic level of this industry, which is flying. Anybody can do it. It's just a matter of getting the equipment, understanding the rules and regulations, doing it safely, and just getting started.
Not being too scared. Yeah.
It's that taking that initial risk to learn how to do something, and the idea of learning to fly a drone, oftentimes you'll see it, they sell drones everywhere in all the venues. Hardly you can't go to a venue anymore that doesn't have a drone for sale somewhere. And the thing that's most important about flying drones, and Ted alluded to this, is the safety issue and the rules and regulations. I mean, there's more to flying a drone than just sitting down and learning how to fly it. There's so many things that go with that in flying them responsibly and making sure that you're safe, because nobody wants to get into a situation where flying a drone is an unsafe situation. So.
Absolutely. Well, and both you, Jim, and Ted have been involved from the beginning, and Ted was a wealth of aviation knowledge as we've developed the safety part of our curriculum. Because exactly like you said, as you're going out there, you're entering the airspace, and the U.S. has an amazingly safe airspace that we usually don't think about in our day-to-day life. And so it's kind of a cool intro into not just the UAV industry, but the aviation industry in general. So both of you have been involved in education. We know these opportunities are out there. You could go into almost any field from marine biology to computer programming and incorporate drones. What barriers do you see for students right now?
I think that the first barrier that I see oftentimes is just lack of awareness of opportunities. And sometimes I feel bad for parents oftentimes because kids will go to their parents kind of for some guidance about what kind of things they should do to learn an occupation or go to work or whatever. And it's still been proven over and over, study after study, that parents have the most significant impact on students' lives on what they're going to do in the future. So our goal really is to help educate and let people understand what those opportunities are. And that can best be done in schools through awareness activities at the elementary grade, through exploratory activities at the junior high and middle school, and then some preparation activities and preparation at the high school. So we need to help parents understand the opportunities, and along with that, get kids really involved in what's going on too, so they can make better choices and decisions, and teaching them and allowing them to make decisions. Because every time we talk to employers about what are they looking for in new employees, first thing they say oftentimes is, we like people to show up. That would be the best, that would be the first step. Secondly, we want them to be honest, and we want them to have communication skills. And so in this process of learning about drones and everything, any other technical education program, you're learning to communicate what you're doing, how you're doing that, and learning to write in a sequential process. So you're learning technical writing skills, and all of those skills are transferable to almost any occupational area. So those are good skills, and drone and STEM education at the public school level are a great way to start that process. Get kids involved in STEM activities at schools, and drones are a great way to teach STEM, because all of the science, technology, education, math, and communication skills are used in teaching students how to fly drones. And the fun part, of course, is flying the drones.
Right.
That's everybody wants to fly. And it really can be fun, and it should be fun and exciting, and it is. So let those opportunities become more available, and help them become available, especially in schools where kids can have access to them.
Absolutely.
I would agree that knowledge of the path ahead is certainly one of the biggest limitations. One of the others is financial.
Oh yeah,
of course,
absolutely.
College, any type of training is expensive. However, as you mentioned, the schools having these types of programs reduces that cost.
It does.
Gives the students some experience in this career field with actual equipment that they're going to use, so they can now be employable while they're going to learn at the higher education type institutions or levels. So that financial limitation can be somewhat mitigated, because you can earn money doing this.
Yes.
Right,
With just a simple remote pilot certificate. Now you're employable as long as you have the experience. So, and the experience is not that hard to get.
Right.
That's true.
You already mentioned many of the ways that, some of the instructors that you've trained are now starting to earn money. Well, students can do that too. As your summer job, maybe you work as a freelance videographer. Or maybe you don't even have to do that in the summer, you can do it all year round. So there are ways to financial limitation.
We had a number of students last spring that when we were doing a competition for the TSA, the Technical Student Organization activity, that were students from rural areas that were already had their 107 pilot certificate, and they were doing data collection on the farms for their parents, surveying irrigation and livestock and all that stuff. And they were so much farther ahead, most of them, than instructors, that they were helping the instructors become more aware of what the purpose of drones can be in their own local and rural areas. So it's really a great way for kids and students and teachers to all become part of the same community. So
Yes, and be prepared as you get into this. You may become the local drone expert
Yes.
in your area. We have a teacher here in a small town called Minico, a little ways outside of Boise, that's been running an awesome drone program. And I happened upon a news article the other day about something drone related in her area. And sure enough, she was interviewed in the paper because she was the go-to drone expert for her area. So I think you're right. It's very easy to get into it. Ted, you mentioned the remote pilot license. Can you talk a little bit for someone who's brand new to this? What is that? When do you need that? How do you get that?
Somebody using drones for a hobby, just to take video for your family, doesn't require a remote pilot certificate. But if you are going to make money using a drone, then you have to have what's called Part 107. It's the federal aviation regulations, if you will. The Code of Federal Regulations requires that you have a remote pilot certificate. There are training programs that prepare people for that examination that the FAA gives. And once you have that examination completed and passed, you get a remote pilot certificate. There is no requirement to demonstrate any capability to fly drones.
It's just
you can have a drone pilot certificate.
Right.
Unlike a private pilot certificate, which I instruct for, there's significant amount of hands-on experience in that. Not required for a remote pilot certificate. So it's very easy to get. I don't recommend you go out and try to make money without some training.
Exactly.
But it's not that hard to get.
Yeah.
And then at least you can get the certificate and then go practice
Sure.
on your own, as long as you follow the rules.
Exactly.
So, and the rules aren't really that hard. Simply don't fly in a dangerous manner. Don't fly over people. You don't fly within a certain distance of an airport.
Sure.
Because you don't want to run into big airplanes with it.
There's a great deal of common sense used with that license. we hope.
Yes.
And it's been cool to see some of our programs, that are at the upper high school level. You do have to be 15 to take the test, 16 to get your license. They've kind of combined preparing for that test with hands-on piloting to kind of supplement, like you said, some of the gaps that might be there. Now, for our teachers out there that are wondering, I do make money, I'm instructing, we're happy to share resources. You're in kind of a gray area. We encourage everyone, if you're going to really get into this, Part 107 is a great way to build your own knowledge, feel super comfortable. We'd encourage everyone as part of their professional development to find time to get that. But there are only some circumstances where it's strictly required. Right. So for some STEM educators where you're really supporting students in pursuit of STEM fields, the FAA has clarified that not in all circumstances are you required to do that when you first get started. So we've talked a lot about how you can really come out of one of these programs with some very practical skills. Of all the things you could teach related to drones, what do you think are some of the most valuable? That if you're a CTE program, you're a high school program, you're trying to prepare your students for careers in the UAV industry, where do you start? What should you be teaching?
The first thing that I've always asked all of the CTE teachers that I used to work with, the first and foremost thing with any CTE program is safety. Safety is such a key factor, and it saves many lives by understanding how to be safe. And I think safety is always a key factor, but safety leads to the use of equipment that then becomes very exciting because you do understand how safe how you need to be safe in order to use this equipment. So flying is probably, as Ted mentioned, the most and the easiest piece of the entire process. It's the motivating factor. So I would probably look at the teaching of some basic flight skills first. And then as time moved on, I would probably add more of the technical building and troubleshooting, those other kinds of things. Because all of a sudden, if your drone hits the ground and you don't know what to do with it, there's a need to know something and how to fix it. And so that becomes then a new problem that you can use that as a teaching tool to fix the drone. So I would say that the flying is the most exciting. And one thing that kids love to do is race. They love competition. And so it's a great way to build an after-school program, if you don't have one for your student organization in tech ed, to start a racing club and let the students race with each other locally and then regionally and perhaps even on a statewide basis. So that's becoming more and more popular.
Absolutely.
Jim, I'd like to add a very slight correction to what you said. If you crash your drone.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to change that to
When you crash your drone.
because you will.
You will crash your drone.
I would also add that teamwork is
Yes,
another thing that's,
absolutely.
you don't think about that when you're looking at first person video from your drone. You're thinking, I fly this by myself. But in fact, if you look at the commercial applications of this and the safety aspects of this, this is not something you should do by yourself.
Right.
Because you will be looking in a soda can, basically a straw, at the world.
Yeah.
Particularly if you have first person vision
Yeah.
video. That's all you can see, and you won't see anything around you. So you need somebody helping you, looking out for other airplanes, for hazards that you may not have expected. So at least 2, perhaps 3 people, one to fly the drone, one to collect the data, and a third just to watch how everything is working together. So this will help build teams. We're working with a school in Mountain Home to build a drone program that will include flying drones, and we are expecting them to work in teams. That's going to be first and foremost part of this. This is a team sport, even though we may not think of that in that way.
Yeah. The other thing that's really important about that too is that we keep all the buzzwords in education. Of course, you've got STEM and you've got every project-based learning, but the other key term here is 21st century skills. And that's what Ted was alluding to. One of those 21st century skills components definitely is teamwork. And then you've got communication, problem solving, all those things is the one thing that a national group of people got together and came up with the 21st century skills that are needed to be successful in the world of work. This is an opportunity to infuse all those skills into a program that meets all of that criteria.
Absolutely. Well, and I know we have a lot of teachers on here that are already leading drone programs, many of them very successful, that have really inspired us as we move forward. And so I want to be sure we include some practical tips. And you guys have touched on some of these, but CT is a little different than traditional instruction. So you kind of have to adapt and teach differently. So from your experience, what have you found are kind of those best practices that make these programs really, really successful?
Well, first of all, we have to help teachers become aware of what it is that they're going to be trying to do. And all the workshops that we've done around the state and the country, the first thing we run into is the reluctance of instructors to just jump in and try, because they're a little bit afraid of the technology. But once they get into it and become familiarized with the concept and what it is and what it can do, so we really need to make sure that teachers have an opportunity to learn about the materials first through in-service and activities, so they have time to learn the material, so they feel comfortable in imparting that information into students. So the first step to me would be to help teachers become aware of the process of teaching and what the drones are. And once they become familiarized with it, they'll find ways to set up stations, to delegate things within the classroom, and how to organize what they want to do with that drone program. So I think helping teachers first get that bit of information that they need and their comfort level so they understand what the drones are about.
One of the ways teachers can do that is through online education programs that make all of our education system readily available to people. So there are a number of opportunities to gain that experience in how these drones are used. And the wonderful part about that is the people teaching those programs are extremely knowledgeable and highly experienced. My university offers degree programs. There are other universities that offer degree programs, but there are also a number of professional education type of programs that you can take advantage of. Perhaps schools can support teachers in getting this type of education and getting it for a number of people and that type of thing, where they get the experience of having these highly experienced, extremely knowledgeable faculty members that will give them their broad experience. So.
Well, and to do a bit of a shameless plug there, we do
Shameless
also,
plug, that's, I like that.
yes,
Shameless plug.
we do a ton of professional development. And
Yeah,
so
we do.
if you have any of our products already, you may already know we do, like Ted said, online training for all of our customers. So if you haven't taken advantage of that, you're free to reach out. And then we also are always offering on-site, live, hands-on training because that is so essential. We also talked earlier about Part 107, and if that is something that you're looking to do, you'll find there are a ton of different courses, both online and in person, and we're happy to recommend some of our favorites to you that both you and your students can take advantage of, because that piece of really investing in yourself as the instructor has huge payoffs for your students when you've had that time to really prepare.
And in addition to my shameless plug, there are also a number of groups around
Yes.
hobby groups that do this as a hobby. And joining one of those will get you a wealth of experience and knowledge as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a college program, but find other like-minded people who are doing the same
There are
thing.
drone leagues in in a lot of communities that do racing on weekends, and they're just people who are excited about drones and they love racing. And so there's a lot of people out there who have like interests that you can hook into and learn a lot from each other.
Absolutely. I know we're running a little bit short on time, but I want to be sure we get to one last question, which I think is on the mind of a lot of the educators we talk to in career and technical education. Is we know are all these opportunities there, and we want all of our students to be able to take advantage of them. And so how do you think educators out there that want to promote equity, can want to promote diversity in their programs, how have you seen programs doing that successfully? What can you do to make sure this is open to all of your students that may be interested?
I think the first thing is just to make sure that the information is across the board to all students, not just to one segment or the other, and to make sure that the career counselors at the high schools and junior highs are getting information to all students and helping them understand when they do their career plans, as an example, for their high school career, to look at the technical education options for all students and look at the non-traditional occupations for males and females to help all students get an idea that occupations are really open to everybody. And there isn't anything that really limits who, because of gender, the reasons you could or could not be successful. So you just have to start looking at things from a much more generic perspective and just making decisions that fit for you as a student and for you and your parents, and get the parents involved, help them understand the options for careers. And there isn't a parent out there that I have ever met in my life that isn't interested about what their kids are going to do when they graduate from high school. There isn't one that isn't breaking their neck to find out what's available for them. So make sure that you include parents in those decisions and help them become aware of what the opportunities are, and they can help guide their students into occupations in CTE.
That's so true.
When you look at the four areas listed on the slide here, not one of those has anything to do with equality or diversity. Where that product comes from doesn't matter.
Right.
So there's no reason to have anything but equality and diversity, and allowing and encouraging students to get involved in this. As a faculty member, my own experience, I'm more interested in the passion of the student. I'm not the least bit interested in the gender or the ethnicity of the student. I enjoy teaching to those who are passionate about learning. So this industry is so new that it's the same way. It's looking for passion. So it doesn't matter any of the other things.
Who it is.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I think that's so true, that passion is really essential. And one of the things we know is that by high school, most of our students have kind of decided who they're going to be. And so there's this huge piece, for those that are teaching at the elementary and middle school level, you're kind of laying the groundwork for students to discover that passion.
Sure. Yep.
And that's one of the things we're seeing in research over and over, that if that passion isn't established by middle school, it may be too late. And so if you're working at those younger levels, you may not be as technical as this preparation, pilot licensing, but that work is every bit as important to make sure every student has a chance to know what's out there and discover if it might be that thing that they discover they're really into.
We've been really fortunate the last year or so to do a number of trainings for teachers at the elementary grade levels and middle school level who are learning and going to be teaching drone piloting to their elementary and middle school students. And it was really fun for me to see how excited the teachers were and learning that they themselves could fly a drone and were very proficient at it by the end of the training. So it's that kind of enthusiasm that's just almost contagious, and the kids will pick up on that. And so they will also see that here's a fun way to learn something new, and it incorporates all the STEM related activities.
Absolutely. I know we've had a lot of questions coming in, and so we'll definitely have time for Q&A at the end. We've mentioned a little bit some of these teacher trainings that we've done and products, so I want to do a brief overview. One resource is we've been really lucky to work with a bunch of educators across the company that have attended our trainings, used our products. If you're looking for some near you, if you visit this website, rubyq.adventures.com, it's interactive. You can click and see who near you has been a part of this. And like Jim mentioned, we've had, sorry about that, a couple different options. And so our main product, the one that we designed in-house with our team of engineers, is called Discover Drones. And so you can see Ruby Q is our drone. She's here on the table, and we really wanted this to be a hands-on exploration of drone technology. So Ruby is a drone that you build yourself from a set of parts. And then our kits include all the materials you need to get started. So knowing that there is kind of a lot of technical information getting into this, how do we make this as easy as possible to send parts that work together and come with the full set of resources? So you have all this stuff, what do you do with it? So we include full STEM curriculum that guides you through how do you build the drone, how do you get it to fly, how do you build piloting skills, and then what's all the STEM that naturally you kind of need to know to fly your drone well, whether that's the physics of how it's flying or the data and telemetry of all the different sensors working together. And then we already touched on this, but we provide a ton of training and support. I think it's probably one of our favorite things that we get to do, to get to meet all these teachers that are using these programs.
The thing that to me is, as a past administrator of a school of about 80-some teachers, the thing that's important to me about any kind of product that we used to purchase was the fact that I always wanted something that was kind of a total package, and that teachers didn't have to go out and start scrounging around looking for things to teach, because the teachers are so busy. They don't have time to do that. So I was always looking for a package that contained everything that they would need to teach that program. And I really feel confident that this drone package has those materials in it. So you don't have to go out and find other things from other sources. It's all right here. So it makes your job a little bit easier as far as putting a program together.
Absolutely. And we really see curriculum in the same way as a resource. We know everyone is going to adapt this to work for their students and their programs, but we want you to have as many resources as possible to get started so that a lot of that work is done for you. So our curriculum is going to include, like we said, all the technical documentation, but also how do you make a lesson into this about STEM, about safety, how do you actually learn to fly and go through some of those exercises. And then how do you connect this to the way drones are being used in the real world to make that connection to how this could be a career. So we include both instructor and student curriculums. This is all for the Discover drones, which is primarily for a high school CTE application. We've also seen some middle school teachers take it, adapt it, and run really awesome middle school programs. So there's no reason it has to be limited there. This is the product we started with. We got a lot of interest when we released it from elementary and lower middle school teachers.
And oddly enough, a lot of community-based organizations like libraries, YMCAs, have been very interested in this and have adapted it for their particular use as well. So it's pretty adaptable, and if like any teacher, everything that I used to get, it was not quite the way I would do it, so I would always modify it to fit me. So it really is, it's capable of, it's capable to have that done and that kind of thing. So it really does make it very flexible.
And that's so true. We've seen everything from a high school CT classroom application to a summer camp at the YMCA.
To public libraries.
To public libraries that are having community members come in as well as students, and sometimes even partnered with their local school, which has been really cool.
Right. It's been great.
One other thing that we've seen is, this was really developed for kind of high school, maybe upper middle school students in mind. And so in the last year, we've come out with a second kit that was, how do we take this experience to do that early awareness stage at the elementary school? So this is what Jim was talking about. We got to do a bunch of trainings with elementary school teachers, outside of school educators, kind of a whole range. But this uses drones that can be flown inside, comes with some lessons that are really adapted to those younger grade levels, and makes it easy to introduce your students to this technology in a way that's really fun and doesn't take a ton of time to really prepare as you're jumping into this. So this still comes with all the same hardware that you would need, of course, adapted for younger students and indoor use. And then it has its own curriculum that really focuses in on what's that essential knowledge, what do you need to get flying, and how does this relate to the real world and what's out there. So we have about 10 minutes left, and so before we get to the questions, the one last thing I want to mention is we are right now doing a Drones for Good video contest. And so if you go to this website right here, contest.adventures.com, we've been really inspired by a lot of the ways teachers and students are coming up with ideas to apply drones in new ways. And so what this is a contest where you create a video to show how you would use drones to do good in new and innovative ways. And there are a bunch of prizes being given away, all the way up to full classroom sets. We've had cool sponsors from Kodak, Free Sky, and Fat Shark come on board to help support it. So if you're thinking about getting into this, definitely check out the website because there's a lot of cool stuff going on there. It's open for at least 3 more weeks, so there's still plenty of time. So with that, we want to open it up to the Q&A. It could be for us at PCS, for Ted, for Jim, anything you've got. We'll answer as many as we can.
All right, I have a couple questions for Ted. These are actually from Brian Cook, who claims that he's a 2002 graduate at Prescott. Of course, you're familiar with that. So his first question is, how will regulations affect schools and towns? He says that certain schools are coming up with a designated area to fly UAVs, and then how might towns react in terms of regulation?
The schools are not, school use is not considered commercial by the FAA, so Part 107, remote pilot certificate is not required. They still do come under the same restrictions in terms of proximity to airports, flying over people, and those types of restrictions. So the areas that they carve out to use is something that they have to take those constraints into consideration. For instance, Mountain Home High School here in Mountain Home, Idaho is within 5 miles of the municipal airport. Now, there's not a lot of traffic there, so it's a simple matter of just notifying me as the airport manager that they want to do something. And then it's up to me to notify any users of the airport if there's going to be a conflict. So that's pretty easy to work around. Now, if you're looking at a major airport, for instance, Boise is a little different situation. But generally, as long as you are not flying above 100 feet,
you're good.
Then it's probably not going to be an issue to anybody. So I don't think that's going to be a huge concern for schools. It's just going to be a matter of notifying. Now, how is the public going to deal with that? That's a good question. And it's one we're continuing to find answers to as we put these things out and where the public sees them. I have seen these operated over one of the largest parades in Idaho. I was very concerned about that going on because it's flying over people. It was supposedly a non-commercial operation. I questioned the safety of that, and the operator elected to discontinue flying. And I was happy that he did. I can tell you that law enforcement's not particularly interested in getting involved, so it'll be the FAA that gets involved. And I can tell you if they are concerned about something enough, it will be a fairly stiff penalty. I've seen instances where that has occurred. But the general public, as a rule, I don't think is overly concerned as long as you're not snooping in their houses. And you don't fly it in a manner where they are concerned for their personal safety. I think if you're flying it over their heads in a general situation, most of them are probably not going to be too concerned, although there may be one or two who are. And of course, those are the one or two who are going to drive that particular situation and should, because we don't want to put anybody at risk by doing these operations at any unnecessary risk. We are teaching drones, and we're teaching people how to fly drones. And that is one of the biggest things that we're concerned about is, will the risks outweigh the benefits? And if that is true, then we won't fly. And that's the same way that everybody needs to approach this type of operation.
And a follow-up question for him. Can you clarify the difference between a remote pilot certificate and a Part 107 license?
It's the same. Part 107 deals with commercial operations of drones. So in order to fly a drone commercially, you need a remote pilot certificate.
Okay.
And we're talking about drones that are 55 pounds or less than 55 pounds. Above that, then it's a different situation. So the discussion that I'm having here is talking about 55 pounds and under.
Right. One other thing to add in there too, that many of our educators at public schools have found, the public perception is one thing, but if you're concerned about the legality and you are within 5 miles of an airport, you may also look into a certificate of authorization or a COA. So that's another resource. The FAA has tons of information on how to apply.
And those have become easier to apply for because the FAA recognizes there are a number of people who want to fly in your airports, and rather than call
every single time,
every 10 minutes.
And that process has been simplified. The FAA is growing in their capability to manage this. 5 years ago, they had no idea what to do. And I think they've done an amazing job of getting the rules to where now I don't necessarily agree with everyone, but we're getting much easier.
They've been very responsive, though, to the drone piloting process, and they were actively involved with us when we were developing the curriculum, because we wanted to make sure we were teaching the concepts as they were going to approve. So we felt that they've been a great resource for us and a good partner to have in this process. So
absolutely.
Will a recording of the webinar be available?
Yes, so everyone who registered for the webinar, whether you're attending now or watching this later, you will receive a recording of the webinar that you can share with anyone that wasn't able to make it.
And a final one, where can I find more information about Discover Drones?
Yeah, so we touched only very briefly on the products. If you want more information, send an email to the one you can see on the screen there, sales@adventures. We have a really awesome team of STEM education specialists that can help answer any questions, put together custom packages, figure out what you need for your program. And of course, you can also visit our website, adventures.com. It has our drone packages and then all of our other products as well.
That was it.
All right. Thank you all so much for attending. It's been great to be here with you. And thank you, Jim and Ted, for joining us today.
Inviting us.
Yes, I appreciate the invitation.
For sure. All right. Bye, everybody.